Methane is a carbon bonded to 4 hydrogen atoms. So this is our methane. And this is the structure of methane, carbon bonded to 4 hydrogen atoms. Now it happens that if this carbon is bonded to something else, it means that this hydrogen will leave, and that's going to give us a new structure. We have carbon now bonded to 3 hydrogen atoms and something else. So this is going to give us a new name. Instead of methane, we are going to have methyl. So this is how a methyl looks. A methyl is a methane with 1 hydrogen less. So this is our number 1. Number 2, we can look a group with 2 carbons, and that is ethane, which is CH3, CH3. This is ethane. And what happens in ethane? Let's draw the structure. So we have carbon bonded to carbon, and each carbon in ethane is bonded to 3 hydrogen atoms. So what happens is that if something else is going to bond to this carbon here, we are going to lose this hydrogen, and that's going to give us a new face of ethane to look like this. Carbon bonded to carbon, but this carbon is still having 3 hydrogen atoms bonded to it, but this carbon here is now bonded to 2 hydrogen, and it has lost 1 hydrogen to give a room so that it can be bonded to something else, and this is going to give us what we call the ethyl. Ethyl, sometimes written like this, ethyl. So you can see CH2, this is CH2 now, and CH3. So this is what we call the ethyl. Let's look at the third one. The third one, we can have propane, which is CH3, CH2, CH3. Because this is long, I'll just use another structure. I'll draw the structure instead of condensed formula. So this is how propane looks like. In propane, we have this primary carbon, and we have this second carbon, which is our secondary carbon, and this third carbon here is also primary carbon. So we have 2 primary carbons on the outside and 1 secondary carbon in between. So this is what we call propane. If it happens that now this carbon is going to be bonded to something else, we can form now it's bonded to, meaning we're going to lose 1 of the hydrogen here, so that in this carbon number 1, this carbon here, we are going to leave or to remain with 2 hydrogen atoms because 1 has left, so that this carbon can be bonded to something else. So in that case, now we are going to have what is called the propyl group. So that's how a propyl group looks like. A propyl is a propane in which something else has been bonded to primary carbon, making the primary carbon to remain one of the primary carbons. So that primary carbon is going to have 2 hydrogen atoms, and we can write a propyl group formula as CH2, and because there are 2 of them, even this secondary carbon is CH2, so we can put here 2 and we have 1 CH3. A propyl group, something else is bonded to the primary carbon. What if it happens that now instead of primary carbon, now something else is coming to bond to the secondary carbon? This is still going to leave us with CH3 now in the primary carbon, CH3, but this carbon which has CH2 initially, 1 hydrogen has left, leaving us with 1 hydrogen. So this is what we call isopropyl. Isopropyl. Still, now we can have CH3, but there are 2 of them, and CH. Okay, so this is how isopropyl looks. The difference between propyl and isopropyl is that isopropyl, something else is bonded to secondary carbon, while a propyl, something else is bonded to the primary carbon of the propane. In our next, we are going to look butane, which is CH3, CH2, and CH2, and CH3. So a butanes look like this. So this is our butane, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, let me write the name. This is our butane, okay? So we have butane, and then we have what is called isobutane, which looks like this. This is what we call isobutane. So I'll just give a name, isobutane, or sometimes we can call it 2-methyl propane. 2-methyl propane, because the methyl groups is in the second or in the secondary carbon. Now let's go back to our butane. In this our butane, we have primary carbon and secondary carbon here from both sides. So this is our secondary carbon and this is our primary carbon. So if it happens that now in our butane we have something else bonded to this primary carbon, then we'll call it N-butyl, or we just call it butyl. Okay, we are going to call it butyl or sometimes N-butyl. In that case, when you hear the word butyl, it is a butane in which something else has been bonded to the primary carbon of that butane. So that's what we call butyl. So if it happens that I'll divide them. So if it happens that in the same butane, now we have something else bonding to the second carbon or the secondary carbon, then we are going to have what is called sec-butyl. Sec-butyl. So sec-butyl is a butane in which something else has been bonded to the secondary carbon, meaning that in this secondary carbon we are going to remain with one hydrogen. So that's how sec-butyl is formed. Let's put our focus now in isobutane. In isobutane, we have one primary carbon here, another one primary carbon here, and another one primary carbon here. So all these carbons, this one, and this one are all primary carbons. But if you look at this second carbon here, it is tertiary carbon because it has been bonded to 3 different groups. Remember, we have primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary. So now this is our tertiary because it has been bonded to 2 groups. So if it happens that, let's just draw it. If it happens that now in any of the primary carbons it is bonded to something else, then in this case we'll call it isobutyl. So isobutyl is a structure formed when something else is being bonded to isobutane. So then we're going to call it isobutyl. What if now in this our same isobutane, now something else is being bonded to the tertiary carbon? So let's say now it is tertiary carbon, something else being bonded to this tertiary carbon, and we are going to call it now tet-butyl. Tet-butyl. So the difference between isobutyl and tet-butyl is that in isobutyl something else is being bonded to the primary carbons, while in tet-butyl is the isobutane in which there's a bonding in the tertiary carbon. So let's go back to our sec-butyl. So if you realize that in this sec-butyl, if we put our focus on this carbon where in the secondary carbon where something else has been bonded to, let's count, then this become our carbon number 1, carbon number 2, and carbon number 3. So we have 3 carbons, which will give us propane. But because one of the hydrogen is missing, instead of propane, we are going to have propyl. So then we can say we have propyl if you consider from this carbon here until this one. But if you look at on this carbon number 1, we have a substituent, and this is a methyl substituent bonded to this propyl group. So in this one, we can just say 1-methyl propyl, or we can just simply say methyl propyl. So sec-butyl can also be called as methyl propyl because this methyl group here is bonded to this carbon number 1, which is now forming the longest chain of the propyl group. Let's look at our isobutyl. In isobutyl now, the attachment is on this carbon, right? So if we make this is our carbon number 1, number 2, and number 3, or if this number 3, it will still give you with one substituent. So if the attachment is in carbon number 1, we can form the longest chain, which is 1, 2, 3, and that's going to give us propyl. So if this is a propyl, look at this carbon number 2, it has a substituent, and this substituent is a methyl. So we have a methyl, and this our methyl, it is in carbon number 2. So we can say 2-methyl propyl, 2-methyl propyl, which is now the name of isobutyl in another word. So let's look at tet-butyl. So if this is our carbon of attachment, then let's call it carbon number 1 and carbon number 2. And because of that, we are going to have 2. That's going to give us ethyl. Remember that? Ethyl from the previous slide. And if that's our ethyl, now let's put focus here. In this carbon number 1, we have 2 substituents, and all of them are methyl groups. So we have 1 methyl group here, 1 methyl group here, and all of them are in carbon number 1, attached to carbon number 1. So because there are 2 methyl groups and all of them are in carbon number 1, we can then say 1,1-dimethyl ethyl. Let me just rub it to create more space. So our tet-butyl can also be named as 1,1,1-dimethyl because there are 2 methyl groups, dimethyl ethyl. So this is how you can name alkyl groups, because now you are going to use them in nomenclature together with other groups. So you can find any of these, either methyl, ethyl, sec-butyl, N-butyl, isobutyl, and any of them can form part of the nomenclature. So you need to know how you can name it. Perfect. So this is how we name the alkyl groups. Thank you so much for watching. Hey, remember to subscribe, share, and like so that if we make videos, you get updated and then you come and listen and watch. Thank you so much. Adios. Bye. Kwaheri.